it's my chair, it's my seat. You have a very bad social philosophy that you can just attack me like that for no reason. You're a mean man. You're a mean boy. You're a mean boy. No. No. Alright, excuse me, cage. I love it, baby. Let's have me go in the cage. Alright, everyone. Hello and welcome back. And now, while I would like to get into another fun, cutesy little video, today we have a little bit heavier of a topic, I guess. It's a tougher conversation for us spiritual folks to have, but I also do think that it is a conversation that would be really beneficial for non-spiritual folks to have too. A conversation about how important it is that we really develop not our morality or religious framework, but specifically our social philosophy. And that we do that before we jump into things that might give us any kind of power. Now, in the context of that, here on this channel we talk a lot about witchcraft, and we talk a lot about, magic and religion and all these things, but there are more than just that can give someone power. When I say power, I mean all of it, right? Political power, social power, legal power, right? If there is something that can give you power of any kind, it is of the utmost importance that you figure out who you are as a human being and what your relationship with and responsibility to other human beings is before you obtain that power. I mean, think of all the people who didn't think about stuff like that before they came into, say, money or the political scene, or even just into the more, mundane power structures like teaching or nursing, or really anywhere where they are in a position of authority over another more vulnerable group. In the scope of this video, we're specifically going to be talking about what this looks like in terms of religion, and in terms of what can go well but also go wrong with that in religion. But do know that this is a concept that, as I said, is really also beneficial for non-spiritual folks, because this can be applied to literally anything that gives you any kind of sway, power, or influence in the world. Now, to bring it back to religion, right, let me give an example. If someone's going to convert to, say, Christianity, a religion that in the West, like America, Europe, places like that, still gives someone a lot of political and social sway, you really, want to be thinking about how one might be using that sway. If you're sitting there converting to Christianity, how are you going to use that extra social perk that it gets you in a heavily Christian society or culturally Christian society? On the complete opposite end, if you're going to engage in something like the left-hand path or occultism, which is very self-directed, very personal, very individualistic, and according to many people, the complete opposite of Christianity, you need to know why you're getting into that. You need to know why it is that you want to develop the spiritual muscle to get what you wish for. And you also want to know what it is you wish for. In the end, you need to understand why and how you're going to justify using your spiritual, social, mental, or any other kind of influential muscle the way you do. Because I will tell you this right now, any spiritual path, be it an organized religion or a more eclectic, individual, solitary practice, will have bad actors in it, will have people in it that do not exactly use that paradigm that they're working in for good things. And you will also have just as many people in those communities, be they organized religion or solitary paths, that do in fact put in the work to build community and ensure safe spaces and allow vulnerability and foster trust with one another. Every single religion has both people who are basically the sheeps who like to be comfy cozy together and the wolves who want to come take advantage and eat them up. And that's really what I want to talk about today. And I will also tell you a bit about what inspired today's topic as well. No doubt some of you are wondering what the hell brought on a topic like this when we usually don't get super hardcore political on here, but when we do, it's for a good reason. And this reason is that recently, around early mid-September, it was discovered that 2 people within the left-hand community were found to actually be the kind of bad actors, wolves in sheep's clothing that I'm talking about. So I'll take the time now also to give you some trigger warnings on, stalking, abuse, SA, and other things like that before we go forward. So if this makes you uncomfortable, you can skip over to this part of the video where we're kind of past all that. But if you want to know what's going on, stick around for this part. So, as I was saying, early mid-September, on the occult side of TikTok specifically, right, the sub-community of the left-hand path, or LHP, and occultism on WitchTok, it became embroiled in quite some controversy because 2 people, Levi Strigoi, or Psychic Divinities, and Corbin Owens, or Corvus Diaboli, they had basically been exposed for being some not so awesome members of the community. And by that I mean they turned out to be serial abusers. Several women came forward about these people and shared their experiences with them. Everything from stalking to grooming to inappropriate interactions to being pressured into engaging in activities they didn't want to, having their intimate photos stolen and used against them, being threatened with being cursed or hexed if they came out and said anything about any of this. And the list goes on and on and on. And that's just like the SA level stuff. That doesn't go into also all of the racism, transphobia, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and many other things. For example, to start with Levi, let's take a look at this person's clip right here about it.
We are going to talk about Levi. If you don't know what has been happening, do not dismiss this video as drama. This man is a predator. He has targeted several women and tried to pressure them to do things that they are not comfortable with. He has came after people of color, the trans community. He is doxxed, he is stalked. And I will never be okay with any of his actions. And I apologize for the role that I played by giving this man a platform. I was not aware of what was happening. I did not know him from before. I was simply trying to be supportive of another cult practitioner. That was my mistake. But as a woman who has been stalked, who has been doxxed, hell, you can go watch videos about me on YouTube. They're there by these very kind of men. I've had my life threatened and I have been sexually assaulted. So I don't fucking play around. These men are weak. And I want everyone who has been a victim to stand strong and to know that Levi, he ran off TikTok for a reason. He knows damn well he is guilty.
Goddamn. That's a whole lot to say in one short video about a person. And what's worse is that, again, this isn't the only person who's had experiences like this with this individual, with this Levi here, who really just, at best, seems to have a terrible time accepting the word no, and at absolute worst, has done some really terrible stuff in reaction to hearing the word no, and also has proven to be pretty unsavory in other aspects outside of, like, you know, not drinking his respect women juice. In fact, there are a lot of people who either have had an experience like that or know someone who has, like Spectre Ball.
Hello, good afternoon. In this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about psychic divinity, seeking divinity. I've been on TikTok 2 years. I saw Psychic Divinity's videos, and the first couple of videos I already knew something was off. I felt something really off. I just felt it. What I know from the time that I have been on TikTok, that he stalked a former friend of mine, which was terrible. Even that I don't get along with this former friend of mine, nobody deserves that. That this person was doxing people, terrible. Now that I'm watching all these videos about what this person, psychic divinity, did is freaking horrendous to many people. I also know that this person went into people's lives to stalk them using various accounts. And I do believe that this person never had any gnosis of their own, that they took gnosis from other practitioners and used that gnosis for their own content. So yes, those are my 2 cents on Levi, psychic divinity.
Yo, Inspector Ball, I finally found you a wife, bro. Now hear me out. All you gotta do is beat their current husband.
That was a while back when I first started TikTok. Does that seem normal to you? Well, it doesn't seem normal to me. I was very, very angry because this person was harassing my female followers. It was disgusting, unnerving. You don't do that. The behaviors of this individual was absolutely atrocious. Atrocious.
And now, I don't really know much about this person, nor did I ever consume their content, because, you know, I'm more in the Christian witch side of things. While I do have friends in the LHP community, I'm not, like, hardcore in there, so I don't really know this person. I don't really know what they're about. I don't really know tons of the stuff that they were, you know, generally posting before. But one really good friend of mine did know this person enough to think that maybe they would be a good person to platform. Did not know about all of these behavioral issues that this person had and all the crazy stuff they would later get into, but she did see the general, you know, that nice front-facing profile this person was giving off, that kind of, you know, new content creator, wants to talk about occultism and all that kind of stuff, and said, oh cool, another creator who seems knowledgeable and kind, let me give them a boost.
Let's talk about Levi. I've been quiet because I didn't know what to do. And rather than doing the wrong thing, I've just been quiet to listen and understand where everybody who's been coming out and has been saying things, I want to know where you're coming from. I do. And just because I haven't said anything doesn't mean that I'm complicit in this. It doesn't mean that I support bad behavior, scary behavior, dangerous behavior, racist behavior. I don't. But what matters more to me, rather than like a quick reaction, is a thoughtful, measured response, which is what you're getting now. I believe women. Period. Full stop. I believe the women who've come forward and have said that they don't feel safe. And I believe them because I have created the environment, or at least helped to create an environment, where that kind of stuff can take root. And that's my responsibility, my fuck up, and I could never apologize enough for it. I've been friends with Levi for a few months. We're still friends, although he might feel differently after he sees this. But unfortunately, I can't ignore what I've been seeing. The harm that I've allowed to take place is real. And you all trust me. And I have violated that trust. And I deserve everything that comes as a consequence of that. And so I'm ready for it. I'm prepared for it. I take full responsibility for allowing a dangerous person to have access to vulnerable people. And I take full responsibility for not doing a better job of protecting vulnerable people. I'm not asking anybody for forgiveness or anything, just understanding. I was just a person who wanted to see the best in someone, who still does want to see the best in someone, that unfortunately I can't support him anymore, because I can't support somebody just making that many people feel unsafe, making that many people upset, harassing that many people.
Again, she did not realize that Levi here was going to be such a freaking menace, but as they say, hindsight is 20/20. Still though, that of course didn't stop my friend from going and making a video about all of this that came out and taking accountability for platforming someone that reasonably she would not have platformed had she known any of this would happen or that this person was capable of this. No one wants to be the kind of person that platforms someone who seems like an authority figure and then is going to abuse that authority. Of course not. I mean, and that's just rough, right? To figure out that someone that you thought was cool is actually really not cool at all. So, you know, I feel for my friend here and for anyone else who trusted that person who was then so horribly let down. Likewise with Corvus over here. Personally, I'm not gonna lie, I have seen some of their content before, and I had my own grievances with it because of the extreme amounts of just problematic talk, right? Namely, a lot of honestly barely concealed anti-Semitism with the way that this person would talk about God. And now I understand that, like, people have a lot of different opinions about God and Christianity and religion, but this wasn't really about God and Christianity. This was specifically calling God by, like, you know, the holy name that Jewish people say not to use, and saying things like, you know, God is a slaver and all these other kinds of terrible stuff that posit people who follow this God as people who are evil people okay with all kinds of atrocities. In case you didn't know, that's actually horribly anti-Semitic rhetoric. It's one thing to talk about bad stuff Christians do, it's another thing to sit here and attack an entire religion. We've seen what happens when religions get demonized too much, and what happens when people believe that a god is bad, and therefore everyone who follows their religion is bad. And so there are a lot of takes of Corvus that honestly aren't really that uncommon in the LHP community, and honestly that's a conversation for another time, that kind of stuff. But what I'd really like to do is point out my little thesis here on social philosophy, and talking about how we can see a certain type of social philosophy playing out on Corvus's page, like with this video here. What language to use here? Dominating space, attracting deepest desires, influencing other people. And then so many people are out in the comments gassing this individual up, thanking them for putting out these tools willy-nilly with, like, very easy instructions on how to use them for these types of things. So happy that this person is sharing something that they say can do all this stuff if you just believe it, if you just slap it down on something and let it go. Just like that. It's almost as easy as making a toaster strudel. You want to dominate people, and you want to influence people, and you want to get your deepest desires? Just throw the sigil on something. Just go do this, go do that. With no caveats, with no discussions on, like, doing things responsibly or wisely or anything else. And now, in fairness, Corvus, they are someone who sells spells and hexes and other such things for a living. I can understand the concept of marketing, though with this verbiage, it's very clear who they're marketing to and what wares they are putting out as samples here. And my thing is, if someone is okay with selling this kind of stuff, with performing this kind of stuff for others, for, you know, money and stuff like that, it gives you a peek into their social philosophy. It gives you a peek into what they are okay with, what they can justify, what they think is acceptable behavior. And in this case, that's domination, attraction, influence, control. And if you look around their page, they've got all kinds of stuff. Again, they're sampling their wares, right? They've got a sigil for romantic attraction and prosperity. They've got sigils for this. They've got little instructions, little freebie spells on how to do that. All kinds of stuff out there to promote the deeper work that they might do for hire. Okay, sure, right? Maybe we're getting the sense that this person's social philosophy is okay with throwing around tokens of, you know, destruction of enemies and domination of spaces and stuff all willy-nilly, like little tokens. But hey, I mean, look, they hex abusers. They hex you know, people who SA and do all these other kinds of terrible things, right? I mean, surely someone who is okay with hexing these terrible villains as their day-to-day job would never also then be okay with doing any of the things that these people are getting cursed for, right?
What he was trying to say is being a therapist that also takes advantage of the most desperate sides of people. And as about the abuse towards women and children, you might be seeing it because you are one of the people that are doing it. So I started speaking with Corbin since I was 17, so a minor, and obviously the sexual connotation couldn't miss from our conversations. Later, after I turned 18, he presented to me as a friend, he presented to me as a mentor. So obviously, in the worst moments of my practice, for example, when I started initiating into Cliffoth, he said he will be there for me and help me. Little did I know that the help of my friend and mentor was supposed to be paid in nature in order for me to have access to it. So, as a barely adult woman who got into the foreign witchcraft communities, in order for me to receive help from this cult leader, I was pursued into sending him sexually explicit content. Even 2 years after, before I blocked him, the request was the same, even though I stopped needing his help a long time ago. And this is the same friend that was calling me a great friend of his, but at the same time was allowing his little acolytes from his coven to make fun of me, to talk shit about me, to slander me, to misrace me, to misgender me, while being friend to me only as long as he was horny. I feel like the story of my interaction with Corbin is pretty lit, but at the same time, it is pretty known in the witchcraft community that he had bigger accusations in the past. And besides this, I know a lot of people that won't come forward and have tons of much more disturbing stories with Corbin, which I'm not going to speak about. I want to allow everyone to feel safe to come and talk forward about those stories. But Corbin dismissed in the past a lot of accusations about being an abuser, and to this there is actually a very famous saying which says, if a person tells you that you are stupid, you laugh, but if 10 people tell you that you are stupid, you have to believe them. Same goes for abuse. If a person calls you an abuser, she might be wrong, but if more than 10 women call you an abuser, you have to think that you're doing something wrong.
Well, I'll be damned. Would you look at that? Isn't that just so fascinating? And now, hold on, wait. Before anyone starts saying, well, Sarah, what did you expect? They're part of the occult communities, and they're left-hand path people. They work with demons. Of course they would be into all this evil stuff and do evil things. Let me stop you right there before you start talking like that and acting like that. Let me show you something. Remember that Levi kid? The one who would posit himself as an authority figure and, tell people how to do magic and all this other stuff. Remember him? Yeah, this was him 2 years ago. It always comes back to those evangelicals, doesn't it? You evangelicals, you people. Always comes back to you somehow, doesn't it? And it especially comes up with folks who just want to flip-flop religions because, as we might imagine, it's not necessarily always religion that dictates someone's morality or their social philosophy. people you see flip-flopping into different beliefs so confidently like this, putting them on and taking them off like shitty Halloween costumes, those are people to be careful of, if not to extend some kind of sympathy for. Because in best case scenario, it's just because they're desperately searching for something that fits. At worst case scenario, it's because they're looking for their next grift. And one really good example of what I'm trying to get at here is actually a separate creator who has nothing to do with this conundrum that happened recently, but is a bit of a conundrum himself, and that is the creator Drayvon is Here. Now they're all caught up on that recent shit show. Let me explain a little bit of something about Drayvon is Here. A little while ago, maybe a year back or so, this person, who used to be quite involved in like magic and, you know, the occult and all this other stuff, in the vein of energy vampirism, though, this Drayvon character sure did do a whole lot of work, let me tell you. For instance, about a year ago, I think, he went out of his way to make a post on WitchTok about why closed practices don't exist, and why anyone of any race, tradition, color, crew, whatever, should be able to do pretty much literally anything they want, no matter what. That they should be able to totally bypass these gatekeepers that say closed practices are real, and just pick and choose like they're going grocery shopping, all the different kinds of things they want to do.
Let's break down closed practices a little bit more and why I say nothing is closed. Now, I'm going to start off by telling everybody, if you think your practice is closed, you are racist. I don't care what practice it is. I don't care where it's from. I don't care about the color of your skin. If you think your practice is closed and somebody else of another color cannot practice it, you are fucking racist.
Everyone was understandably really upset because obviously that isn't true. Closed practices do exist, and they exist for a reason. They are closed because they are trying to protect and preserve their traditions. And most often you're going to see closed practices being talked about in the context of practices of, say, people of color, or people who have been historically disinherited and disenfranchised. For example, Judaism is a closed religion. You have to actively convert, and it's not just like you wake up one day and decide you're Jewish. It's like a year-long conversion experience. You have to really be in it to win it before you are officially considered Jewish. Other things like, say, hoodoo or Santeria or any of these other very heavily, people-based faiths, they are closed because the deities they have, the spirits they work with, and the traditions they have are rooted in, like, collective experiences. Like, hoodoo, for instance, is one that was very much a tool of the oppressed, enslaved people in America to get some kind of agency back and get some kind of help. And even after slavery ended, these folks were still using it and are still using it today because we live in a system that is still very much not, like, fair or good or righteous or just to African Americans. So of course, again, people were upset and they were all up in the comments being like, this isn't true, this is bad, you shouldn't know, don't listen, don't do, blah, blah, blah. Just bang, blew that video up. And then Drayvon goes and posts a second video about how, ha ha ha, you guys all fell for it. That was all part of my big plan to vamp energy off of you all. As in, you know, literally take all of that anger being thrown his way and suck it up and eat it. Use it for his own purpose, his own vitality, his own magic, his own everything else.
Oh, I'm so glad that video worked. I'm starting to lose my touch a little bit. Energy vampirism is one of the best tools you can ever use for hate and harassment. It's a good way to expose people's true feelings, their true emotions, the stuff they say behind closed doors but don't generally say in public, they'll say on the internet nowadays, and it's a very good thing to exploit.
That's what energy vampirism is. It's literally pulling, right, just like a blood vampire sucks the blood out of people. Well, a psychic or energetic vampire pulls the energy off of people. You know, if you ever, like, just get really drained around somebody, and then they come out and they're like, I'm an energy vampire. Granted, like, energy vampirism isn't inherently bad. Like, it's not full stop inherently bad. It's just that there are a lot of people like Drayvon who use it like shit. And this is an example of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about developing social philosophy. With these people who are okay with using this so poorly. They are willing to harm communities by spreading false information. Like, right, they're willing to go out there and say, yeah, closed practices aren't real. Go ahead and take and touch and do and whatever you want. They're willing to spread this harmful information for the sake of their own gain. For the sake of their own clout, power, energy, whatever else it is that they want. They're willing to lie about it and then gloat about it. They're willing to take advantage of people's indignance and frustration and alarm to get what they want. And so knowing that, what happened later was so bizarre, because then we watched Drayvon switch out his normal little, black beanie here for one with a moon and a star on it. Suddenly, he had converted to Islam.
This was a massive thing for me. Going from the occult to religious is a big thing, and you're going to feel a lot of shame and a lot of regret. And although I was very forgiving with myself because I was just seeking my path, I was searching high and low to find the correct answers, and I found the correct answer last, it was through seeking forgiveness from God that I was able to get through that.
And I mean, literally out of nowhere. Did a 180, started making posts about how he really regretted being in the occult, and also started making a lot of posts that are, genuinely some Facebook meme level conspiracy / disinformation about Christianity. All these different topics about how, Christianity is secretly Mithraism and all this other stuff. Knowing who he was, and seeing now who he claims to be, I can only wonder if he has now just simply switched tracks and moved to a different pool of people to suck off from. I mean, are you really Muslim just by switching your beanie to a different style? Especially when you seem to be employing the same rage bait tactics that you had so confidently and proudly displayed just the year before? And moreover, now it seems he's got a double pool of energy. Both the energy of pissed off Christians and the energy of, basically fans and sycophants who are gassing him up and trying to encourage him and all this other stuff into, getting deeper into Islam. He's got a 2-for-1 now. He's got both of it. Is it any wonder that I can look at that and question if he's a real convert and if he's really changed his ways when, for all intents and purposes, the walk doesn't match the talk? And I mean, hey, shit, listen, maybe this guy is genuine. Maybe he is doing a 180 and he's just, kind of misinformed or misguided about certain things, or doesn't really have good sources to work from. Maybe I'm just too jaded and distrustful in this person based on, stuff I've seen before. Maybe I really should throw all that out and let him turn over a new leaf. And if that's the case, may God forgive me. I'm sorry for, putting out that judgment. But the reason I'm sitting here looking with a little bit of distrust is because, just because you change religions doesn't mean that all of the stuff you knew before magically disappears. Just because you say online that you are of a different faith does not mean that your social philosophy has inherently shifted. Once you out yourself as someone who is okay for manipulating people's emotions and trust for your own gain, that kind of stain doesn't just come out of your reputation. It colors everything you do after that. Again, here's to hoping this dude is genuine and is making strides to just find a philosophy that is different and a religion or whatever. But I do have my doubts, given what I'm seeing and what I've seen before. But again, still, don't think that just because I started this conversation with the left-hand path community, the occult community, that it is something restricted to folks who practice magic, do witchcraft, or follow any kind of occult or magical paths. Absolutely not. I'm sure you can all guess where I'm going with this, but there's another religion out there that is full of bad actors, really bad actors, and that is what? Oh, Christianity. You knew I was going to go there, but we have to talk about it, right? Because again, all religions have the capability to have these kinds of bad actors. And with Christianity having 2.4 billion adherents worldwide across all different cultures, races, languages, geographic locations, everything else, it's going to be really hard to get everyone on the same page all the time. Even though they all subscribe to the same religious label and they're on those, demographic sheets clicking Christian, it does not mean that they have inherently the same social philosophy, which is different than religion. And I could tell you there's one definition of a Christian, that there's one thing that unites all these Christians, but even as we scroll these results under a question, what defines a Christian, we find very different answers in very different directions. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to define Christian like this. A Christian is someone who believes in one God, as well as his Spirit and his Son, Jesus Christ, and who follows the commandments Jesus set forth to love God and love one another, as well as someone who exemplifies that spirit of love in their everyday life. One God, one Son, love God, love one another, right? At the very basic, we can say all Christians are united by that. But undoubtedly, someone will come argue with me about that definition. There are so many denominations of Christianity that just get into the weeds on these very specific details, you know what I mean? But for argument's sake, let's say that's it. That my definition is the definition of Christianity, and anyone who has at least that can call themselves a Christian. That definition covers a broad range of people. And yet, not only do these people not all have the same theological frameworks, right? Like, you know, how we have Catholics and Orthodox and Protestant and Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and everyone else who would kind of fall under that broad definition. Not only are they all different in their theological framework, they're also different in their social philosophy, especially when it comes to how we define that pesky little word, love. For example, some people might think that love is to feed the poor, clothe the poor, heal the sick, and make sure everyone is cared for. Other people might call that communism. Some people might think it is very loving to tell the gay couple walking down the street that they need to repent and stop being gay so they can go to heaven. Other people will call that homophobia. All across the 2.4 billion people that make up Christianity, we can vaguely agree on that most general definition of what it is to be Christian, and yet still so radically differ in our social philosophy, in how we apply and express and work within the parameters of that religious framework. And this is why I'm saying religion does not equal social philosophy. Religion does not equal morality. Moreover, we might eventually lose the plot altogether to the point that many people's concept of love can suddenly start looking suspiciously much like hate. And then those people who somehow accidentally mistake love for hate, those people get into power and they start making some interesting decisions. Then things go all kinds of south. I mean, just look at America's political climate right now, right? America's political climate and the rise of this little thing called Christian nationalism. According to this PBS interview, which I will link down below if you want to watch that whole video or read the transcript or whatever, the person being interviewed here, Brad Onishi, was once a Christian nationalist, and he has since kind of deconstructed that idea and gone on to write all kinds of different books about, you know, all the problematic stuff that this ideology entails and contains, and it tries to enforce. In this interview, therefore, we discover that Christian nationalism has a few key traits, and that is that, for one, they want the federal government to declare and treat this country of America as a specifically Christian nation, which I guess means that the Bill of Rights is just going to become the next cool toilet paper, because what is the First Amendment? They also want laws based on Christian values and, want to very specifically entrench and codify into law all the things that are Christian, and I say Christian with heavy air quotes. And they also want being American to be synonymous with being Christian. They really want to enforce this idea that if you are going to call yourself American, you have to be Christian. If you are not Christian, you are not American, according to this new apostolic reformation and these other people who would consider themselves Christian nationalists. They're also so obsessed with the concept of spiritual warfare, right? That they are God's soldiers. They're the boots on the ground fighting to make this country great and Christian and a proper nation in honor of God and blah, 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 blah. They also happen to be a majority white evangelicals. And that denomination I mentioned, that little new apostolic reformation, that splinter denomination, they actually were heavily involved in the January 6th fiasco of trying to keep Biden out of office. They genuinely think that Democrats are demons or something, and that Trump is God's appointed hero of the country. And let me just say here, that cute little elephant-shaped party sure doesn't have a problem with aligning with these kinds of people in order to get votes. Okay? They really don't. And now, remember, I had air quotes around Christian values, and that's because what a lot of people who actually read this book would consider Christian values, love your neighbor, feed the poor, clothe the poor, cure the sick, walk in gentleness, all things you do, do them in love. You know, all that kind of stuff. All those things that people who are knowledgeable about the religion would consider Christian values, they don't seem to cross the mind of the people who are advocating for Christian nationalism. These folks, with their Project 2025 nightmare, they see Christian values as the enforcement of a nuclear family model that's very vintage 1950s, right? A model where man and women only are allowed to be partners, and the woman stays home and pops out 20 kids, while the man goes and biddly boos his ass out onto the job market and goes and plays hero for the family, bringing in all the money, being the breadwinner. To them, Christian values are that in a world where, you know, the LGBTQ community just doesn't exist, and where everyone has, if for nothing else, a set of bootstraps to pull themselves up by, and where, of course, basic standards of healthcare, like abortion, are super hardcore, not only illegal, but criminalized, and things like birth control are also very much on the hit list. They're the kind of people who define Christian values as plastering the 10 Commandments in schools, but not providing the funds to give all of those hungry children something to eat at lunchtime. And yet these people, despite the fact that so many other Christians would say they are inherently and diametrically opposed to the true spirit of Christianity, they do call themselves Christian. They do all this stuff in the name of God. And to be totally transparent, yeah, hi, all of you not all Christians types that may be watching this right now, delete your comment. Delete it. Because if you're more worried about telling everyone that people like this are not real Christians on some real good old-fashioned no true Scotsman fallacy, if you're more interested and invested in trying to protect the image of Christians and not use your voice to directly oppose these people and their viewpoints, you are a part of the problem. You are also doing a disservice. Your social philosophy, your priorities are all messed up. You want to do some good? You want to prove that not all Christians are like that? Use your voice to stand against this, to advocate for the opposite, to advocate for true Christian values. Don't get in people's comments and start leaving useless nonsense about how, oh, I'm sorry, on behalf of all Christians, I'm sorry, not all Christians are like that, they're not real Christians. Don't do that. That's useless. That's very self-aggrandizing and self-serving. Useless. Don't do that. And there are so many more examples of this in other religions too, right? Like, again, this isn't just Christians, this isn't just occultists and demonolators. This is, for example, right now with the political climate we've got going on, this is, the many Jewish and Christian Zionists who are totally fine with Israel's absolute destruction of both Gaza and the West Bank. And there are Jewish and, of course, Christian anti-Zionists who are very much against the actual genocide of innocent people, who are against the erasure of culture and history and language, and against the destruction of the land and all these other things.
The Torah does not permit us to kill or steal. The Torah does not permit us to occupy. They are liars. They are thieves. They are scoundrels. They are murderers. And it is not acceptable according to the Jewish teaching. Never was, never is, and never will be. We will not be silent. We dare not be silent. This is genocide. They are the anti-Semites. Yes. Jews and Muslims lived for hundreds and hundreds of years and literally thousands of years in Arab countries. The difference of religion was never an impediment to coexistence. And in fact, it was the Muslims who took the Jews in by the Crusades, by the Inquisition, always took the Jews in. Throughout that occupation, throughout Zionism, we can live again. We can live again in peace. God will help with his compassion and mercy, that we will realize and see, inshallah, soon, a free Palestine, a free Palestine, a free Gaza, a free Gaza. Assalamu alaikum.
And it should be noted, actually, that there are more Christian Zionists out there than there are entire collective Jewish people alive. The population of Christian Zionists is more than the entire global population of all Jewish people in the world. Let that sink in for a minute. And also be reminded of the fact that Christian Zionists want all Jewish people to go to Israel so that they can all die and trigger the coming of Christ again. Anyway, this is also problems that we see popping up with non-Abrahamic folks too. Whether they be Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, it's neither here nor there. This happens outside of that whole shindig. It happens outside of demonology, outside Christianity, all of it. It happens even among pagan folk. Just as there are eco-friendly, community conscious, really kind and sweet people among, Norse or Germanic or Slavic or Hellenic pagans, so too are there people who use Norse, Greek, Slavic, Germanic paganism and reconstructed beliefs to justify white supremacy and nationalism and cultural purism and all other kinds of really nasty, nasty stuff. There are also, of course, Buddhists who naturally are very much concerned with, letting go of material desires and peace and goodwill, who we have seen in the history books showing such stark displays of protest against injustice and colonialism and all these other things. And then there are Buddhists who contribute to the persecution of Muslims in Myanmar and commit serious acts of violence against them. As I said, every single religion has people who are really cool and people who are not cool at all. And that's because of social philosophy. If that is not rock solid, nothing's going to help that. Not religion, not anything else. And that's because, again, as I've said before, the reason this is even possible is because religion doesn't actually dictate morality the way people think. It really doesn't. If your social philosophy is fine with abuse, genocide, torture, colonization, hierarchy and hegemony, supremacy, any of these kinds of things, then it doesn't matter what religion you join, you're going to be able to find ways to bend it to fit your philosophy, to fit your narratives. Doesn't matter if you pledge your soul to Satan or if you go to church every Sunday, bitch, you can find a way to do it. Again, with Christianity as a beautiful example, it's the same damn book we're all looking at, and yet, there are people who are going to look at the bajillion of verses in the Bible that say that having wealth is bad, and be like, we should really be more fair and equitable in society. And then there are people who are going to cherry pick the maybe 7 frickin' verses in that entire book, take them out of context, and use them to justify harassing the LGBTQ community. So that's actually where the really funny irony is, that social philosophy dictates how you express it through your religion. Your religion does not necessarily dictate how you express your social philosophy. I absolutely do know people who decided to pick a religion based on stuff they already believed. I mean, in a way, right? That's kind of almost how it always goes. Most people do what resonates, right? They find something that resonates because they've already kind of decided their social philosophy, their moral frameworks, and they've already decided to kind of find something, some faith, some system, some community, some structure that matches that, rather than look at the religion and actually see what it's saying and decide to try and live up to those values. And again, whether you're a demonologist or a Christian, you can have the same messed up approaches to how you treat people and how you engage with the world. In fact, if they would get over themselves and stop playing this fun little us versus them game, they might find actually that, they have a lot in common. That abusers, like the ones who kicked off this whole shindig on the occult community, share a lot in common with the pastors that also abuse kids in their congregation and everything else. However, hold on. Likewise, it works in the opposite direction too, and I really want to take this time to highlight some beautiful, wonderful people who, across various different faiths and traditions and experiences and walks of life, really exemplify what I'm talking about. And to that end, I will start by explaining more again of what I mean when I say, hey, social philosophy versus religion, right? So, to demonstrate, I am a Christian. My social philosophy and my religious beliefs all tangle up with each other, yes, but there did come a time where I had to honestly look at my beliefs and say, do I believe these things because Christianity told me to believe them? Or do I believe them because I truly believe that they are right and just and good? And frankly, no, I don't believe what I believe just because God said so. I don't believe that we should create a world where every person is loved, cared for, respected, cherished, and given, good community space because Jesus said so. I don't believe in the beauty of the world, the stewardship of the earth, and all these other things because God said so. I believe them because I know them to be good, because I truly, genuinely believe that this is good, and because I love people, and I love nature. I genuinely love people so much. I love the diversity. I love all the different cultures and different expressions of humanity, the languages, the food, the stories. It's all so beautiful to me, and I really, really appreciate it, and I want a world where we can celebrate all of what is, where we can look at each other and while still holding the boundaries of our own beliefs and still saying, this is what I believe and this is my culture and this is my tradition, we can likewise give other people the same space for those boundaries and appreciate their culture and their faith and their traditions with them too. I cannot ever imagine being okay with a world where I can just look at an entire group of people and be fine with condemning them to misery and suffering and death. That is outside the scope of my imagination. That's outside the scope of what I can bear as someone who loves people and loves humanity and all of its quirks and different little things that make it unique. And so I am Christian for so many reasons. Namely, one, because I really do feel that I am genuinely connected to this God, that we have some kind of relationship history being, that I stem from this God, right? This God is mine, I can feel that. But also because this God and I seem to be on the same wavelength about that God and his Spirit and his Son are genuine champions of that philosophy of love for all things, of wanting to see the flourishing and the beauty and the growth and the happiness and the comfort of all beings, creatures, and everything. I have this social philosophy and I see it echoed in the Word of God. I see it demonstrated in the life of Jesus. And so we just happen to line up real good. But what's so special is that, again, my social philosophy doesn't just exist within the context of Christianity. It exists across people of all faiths, of all traditions. They exist in the animists and the folk practitioners. They exist in, heathens and other types of pagans, and they exist in Hellenic polytheists. They exist in so many different types of people, in so many different faiths, in so many different walks of life. Outside of the bullshit that, Instagram and TikTok will tell you paganism is, right? All the pretty aesthetics and, those perfect photo-worthy altars and setups and, the perfect lighting and everything else. There are people who are talking the talk and also walking the walk. And so when it comes to getting off the spectrum of demonolatry and Christianity alike, when we look at certain pagan practitioners or folk practitioners, like, for instance, Hexmarie and Fairy Gothparent, we can see people who are committed to the justice, the well-being, and the equity of all people. These two are people who are deeply concerned with inclusive community and community building, with dismantling systems that oppress people, with focusing on building up the empowerment of all people across all these spectrums of race, gender, tradition, all these other kinds of things. These two are people I admire, not only because they have a really interesting practice and I've learned a lot from them, just on the details of their spirituality, but also because they have such a beautiful social philosophy and they use their voice and their platform to explain that, to support that, to encourage that in other people. And so, in fact, Fairy Gothparent is very vocal about the problem of fascism and white supremacy in heathenry communities, in Norse pagan communities, and all these other kinds of, spaces, right? They are continuously discussing how it's not enough to just be like, not all pagans, not all pagans. You have to be a vocal proponent of not accepting this kind of stuff, of calling this stuff out, of being aware of dog whistles and these other problematic things that people who misuse the name of the Norse gods will do to find their kinsfolk in shitty behavior.
I wasn't going to make a No Nuance November post for Norse Talk since nuance is almost never present here. However, I'm feeling kind of wound up about some of the various heathenry-related dramas that have unfolded over the past month, so why not? It isn't enough for us to just pat ourselves on the back for not being the AFA and declaring no frith with fascists when we don't really have any frith with each other. At best, we get some grith between the various cliques before the ceasefire collapses. And while I think that I've avoided the clique factor at large, I recognize that I'm not without blame in this. Our time would be better spent establishing who we are, who we want to have community with, and what we are willing to do to achieve those goals. Even if it means we need to be brave and try something new.
They are also a voice of reason, and they do a lot of really interesting videos on, like, you know, actually historically accurate Viking clothes and what this romanticizing of Vikings kind of causes.
Consider this your crash course into the multifaceted issue that is the Viking aesthetic. So it's been about 1,000 years since the Viking Age, and there's almost certainly a lot of things that we will never know for sure, including what they looked like. But based on both archaeological evidence and information extrapolated from first-hand accounts from the time, we've got a relatively decent idea about it. And one of those first-hand accounts even mentions them wearing an eye cosmetic. However, there's a pretty big difference between wearing eyeliner and all of this. So how did we get here? The historical inaccuracy of these looks is only telling half the story, because most of these folks say that they're doing a fantasy Viking look. Fantasy does not fall from the sky. We create it, and both our biases and ideals can be reflected in it. And these markings have real-life origins. Those origins being with the traditions of indigenous peoples. Over the course of colonization, these traditions were nearly wiped out from cultural genocide. And now we slap it on our cosplays and call it creativity. When in reality, it's all just part of the primitivist aesthetic playbook, which dehumanizes and fetishizes indigenous peoples around the world. And so with the ongoing MMIW crisis and the potential overturning of Ikwassoon, I think that continuing to use these kinds of markings as a form of self-empowerment is really just leaning into white power. Hope this helps.
I don't know, a lot of people don't really seem to understand what it means when we say a lot of pagan faiths are reconstructed, as in we don't have a lot of the direct materials of how these people practice anymore, that we kind of did our best with what we had available. So, you know, when you got Greek pagans saying stuff like only Greeks can worship the Greek gods, it's like, baby, have you heard of the Greek Empire? Holy shit. Still, right? The Fairy Goth Parent is really cool. They have a lot of solidarity with other faith practices. They have a lot of really beautiful art and other fun projects that they do. So, I mean, definitely check them out. But on the flip side also is Hexmarie, and I love Hexmarie. I've spoken to her a few times, and in fact, she even helped me when it came time on Where the Gods Left Off to talk to Frau Berta. She pointed me towards a lot of folk stories and other things that would help me figure out about this goddess that's almost kind of been lost to time. And of course is a goddess that heavily figures in her own spiritual practice. But in some of her content, you know, she says the big message out loud, right? She points out that politics and folk magic, they are inherently intertwined. And that engaging with these deeply cultural, land-based, you know, people-based, tribe-based traditions like animism and the many expressions it has across so many different cultures is a way to push back on the effects of white supremacy and colonialism.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Folk magic and politics go hand in hand. And animism and land back and indigenous rights go hand in hand. A lot of people who look like me have been really facing a dark shadow of colonization, seeing a genocide and land theft happen real time. This is legitimately a very urgent situation, and the world needs to know what's really happening in Palestine. But I want to encourage us to slow down and take a little breath. There are people who have been doing this work and promoting Palestinian voices for a very long time. It's not all on us individually. If you burn out and can't act, it isn't actually going to help anybody. And you are not alone in this. You don't have to solve this yourself. You can't. You can raise your voice and join the many people who have been in this movement for decades, since before you were born. Something really easy and tangible you can do if you live in the United States is download this 5 Calls app. It makes it super easy and fast to call your representative. They give you a script. It makes it super easy. Now, this might seem old-fashioned, calling your representatives or emailing your representatives, but this really does matter. They take your name and they take your address and they log everyone who calls. And the people who you don't agree with, who support things you find abhorrent, they are calling every day. The indigenous people of the world need us to join up with them and all join together on the side of land back and indigenous rights all over the world. This is something we're in for the long haul, so do what you can and take care of yourself and take care of other people, because we need you to be able to show up like this consistently throughout your life.
These are folks that work outside the bounds of Christianity, and yet they still hold a social philosophy that I agree with, I love, I admire, I respect, and that I display often within the bounds of Christianity, right? Completely different religions, same core values, you know what I mean? They understand the intricacies of faith and culture and how all these things are actually intertwined, that there is and should not be really this us and them or these hard lines in this attempt at creating cultural purity, because that gets us into a lot more trouble than it gets us out of. They see the different faiths and traditions of other people and see in it the goodness, the value, the beauty, and the shared core values among them all. And they also point out how purists and us versus them mentalities and, historical revisionism really damage people's ability to properly engage not only with a certain faith tradition, but respectfully engage with other faith traditions. And I love their content. I think they're great. I mean, I think, even from a normal spirituality perspective, I learn a lot about their practices and about, what they believe and about their cultural traditions. Like Hexmarie is very into that Pennsylvania Dutch specific tradition. Fairy Goth Parent, again, does a lot with, that kind of more Norse pagan type thing, and it has a lot of great educational information about Norse morality and Norse values and other stuff like that, which is really, really cool. I may not follow their religious expressions and faith traditions, I may not worship Norse gods or Germanic gods, but I can still appreciate both the stories, the gods, and also their practitioners, especially when these practitioners and I all have the same core values of be good people. Be good people. Be good to one another. Support one another. Uplift one another. Honor one another. Right? And yeah, in Christianity too, there are, again, tons of bad actors. We can name them all day long. We could go down a big old list and be here forever. But there are good people too. There are the people with the good social philosophy. The ones that really, really, really want to see that world where we are all secure, safe, loved, cared for, in community, in brotherhood with one another, right? And I could talk about my friends in the Christian witch community, right? Hannah and Lena and Mimi, who, even though we all have, different views on theological frameworks, right? Some, Mimi growing up in, Pentecostal Appalachia, myself growing up with a more Southern European Catholic style. Even though we have these differences in, how we were introduced to Christianity and how we think about God and certain things like that, we all have the same values, right? Of, being a voice for the marginalized, supporting communities who are often harmed, especially harmed by the church, by mainstream Christianity, of making space for people to approach and develop spirituality the way that makes sense to them. Yeah, I could talk about all of that, but it doesn't just exist among Christian witches. It also exists just among vanilla Christians. And three I really want to hold up are actually Knothead, Pastor Paul Dries, and Archbishop Jonathan Blake. These three are powerhouses, and they got big platforms, and they use those platforms for good things. Knothead, for instance, is one who is a champion of the LGBTQ community. Trevor Project up in there, something that he is supporting. Just on his profile, he makes it clear he's an ally for this community, and he is continuously using his voice to not only push back on harmful rhetoric that has hurt, LGBT community people and, Christian LGBTQ members especially, but also to promote love, right? To promote that sense of, hey, you are still beloved of God. You are still good. You are still a person. You're still deserving of love and respect and goodness.
I am late in addressing Greg Locke. I refuse to call that man a pastor. The reason I'm late is I've been dealing with migraines all week, which make it impossible for me to even look at a phone screen. But to my friends and to people I don't know who are witches or Wiccans or pagans or anything other than a Christian, please know that you are loved. Please know that you are not hated and vilified by everyone. And I'm not trying to say not all Christians, because clearly it's too damn many. And clearly we don't know how to control this clown or how to get him to stop his incitement to violence. But please, please, please know that you are loved. And know that you are in my prayers, not that you would convert or that you would come to believe everything I believe or I would come to believe everything you believe, but simply that I'm praying for your safety and you are loved.
He is someone who shares his own struggles and his own humanity, as well as asks his community, how can I help you? How can I serve you? What can I do for you? What do you need? And also, he'll live stream his sermons so that folks who are uncomfortable with going to a real church or who just for whatever reason cannot make it there still get a chance to hear that kind of preaching, that message, and that love, that encouragement that they might need. And again, that's just good. That's just good. That's what I'd be calling good fucking people, right? Not to make it like a good versus bad thing, but at the end of the day, I see my social philosophy as good, and I am so encouraged to see this social philosophy among so many people who want goodness to flourish, who want peace and prosperity and joy and community to flourish. So Knothead is someone who can really say shame on you to someone who is being callous and hurtful to a member of the LGBTQ community, and then turn right around to that wounded person and remind them that they are good, they are loved, they are worthy, they are human. That's social philosophy that I can rock with. Being in service to those in need, recognizing their dignity, and being a champion, using one's platform to promote that good behavior, that good treatment of other people. Likewise, from a more Lutheran perspective, we have Pastor Paul. Pastor Paul is really cool. He is a Lutheran pastor, and he's also part of that progressive clergy movement. He's got progressive clergy right there in his bio. And he often does a lot of skits where, he'll be him, the pastor, and then he will also have someone else representing, your average, I guess, mainstream Christian person who has certain questions or doesn't really understand a lot of things. And he'll use those skits to address, a lot of teachable moments, a lot of things that are helping people break down theology a lot, and also social philosophy.
Pastor, did you see that all public schools in Oklahoma are required to teach the Bible? Isn't that great? No, I think it's terrible. Why? I thought you'd be in favor of teaching everybody the Bible. I love the idea of teaching about the Bible, but not in public schools. The First Amendment clearly states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The government isn't supposed to favor any one religion over the others, and this clearly does. This is about teaching morality, not about teaching Christianity. Then why does the law require only the scriptures of Christianity to be used? Oh, because Christianity is the best. That's literally favoring Christianity over other religions. But that's about Congress. That's not about the states. This was already settled in 1962 with Engel v. Vitale, where the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to encourage recitation of prayer in public schools. People can pray in public schools if they want, but the school can't encourage this behavior. Regardless of the law, isn't it good to teach kids about the Bible? First, why would we want teachers who have no required theological training to suddenly teach students about the Bible? That's like asking me to start teaching about calculus in confirmation, I suppose. Second, practicing Christians don't even really agree on the basics of teaching the Bible. What if your teacher told students that the Bible encourages slavery, or that it's supportive of LGBTQ plus folks? I wouldn't like that at all. What if they said that all Christians are required to share everything they have with each other in a system that's basically communism? Yeah, I don't really talk about that part. Actually, you know what? Maybe I've changed my mind about this. I'm beginning to have my doubts. Maybe teachers should explain how Jesus condemns those who judge others. I'm sure that's not necessary. Or maybe teachers should explain how we are supposed to give land back to its original inhabitants every 50 years and not charge any interest on people who are poor. But how would the rich exploit the poor if that was the case? Or how Jesus encouraged the wealthy to give up everything they own and give it to the poor, saying, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God." Do you think teachers would actually say that? I hope so. This would be a great example of nonviolent resistance. But you wouldn't make a lesson plan for teachers interested in teaching the Bible from a progressive framework, would you? That sounds kind of interesting, honestly. If any teachers see this and would be interested, drop a comment and just let me know. Drop a comment. What are you talking about? Also,
and then other times, he will just come out directly and say the God-honest truth. He uses the angle of his religion, the framework of his religion, to explain and express and put forward social philosophy that is helpful. And he points out the exact kind of ideas that I rock with. It's not just like kind of icky. It is sinful. Genuinely not good at all. Like, to make up, for instance, lies about an entire immigrant population and what they may or may not be eating out there in the American Midwest.
Friends, it is profoundly sinful to spread racist lies about recent immigrants. These kind of claims are meant to villainize immigrants and cast Trump as a savior against this threat. Now, do I love Harris? No, her stance on the Palestinian genocide is abhorrent in my opinion. And quite frankly, both of these leaders seem okay with the genocide in Palestine. However, one of these leaders is laying the groundwork for a similar genocide to happen here. This is how the path to genocide starts. You villainize a group, and that begins to legitimize violence against them. Now, to be clear, this is not an endorsement by any means. It's just sometimes as Christian leaders, you have to call a thing for what it is. Sinful. In the year of our Lord 2024, why do I have to explain that racist lies against people of color are sinful?
So as a member of that progressive clergy movement, Pastor Paul is someone trying to wrest Christianity out of the hands of these people who would see America become basically a Christian nationalist fascist hellhole. He's one of the voices that pushes back against all of this really damaging rhetoric, this restricting, this unfair, this divisive, and just discriminatory rhetoric, and put the actual core values that Christianity is truly about back at the forefront. He's the one who, Bing Bong, is actually pointing out the message of the cross. It's a message of grace and redemption, hope, love. A lot of his content is hyper-political because, right, religion is, for many people, a political tool. Religion is the hammer that a lot of people use to justify a lot of very not awesome social philosophy. And wouldn't you know, as I was saying earlier, when people are using a religious label or a religious institution or a religious framework that you subscribe to as a hammer against innocent people, it's kind of your responsibility to speak up. It's all of our responsibility to address people who abuse labels like Christian to garner unwarranted power, privilege, and other such things, and to hurt innocent people. And to that end, Archbishop Blake is a powerhouse. He is an Episcopal Archbishop, and damn, he really just be out there gunning. He'd be out there gunning. He says all kinds of very sharp and zesty stuff to really throw it in people's face that, hey, the way people are using the name of Christ right now absolutely sucks. He speaks the truth that religion as an institution can end up having people totally miss the point of what the religion is trying to say in the first place.
Take the Gospels with a pinch of salt. The biblical Jesus is a mythical, unpredictable, and destabilizing figure, based on the writer's theft of Jesus' loving and humble life and ministry, and their manipulation of the facts, invention of events, alteration and amendment of and addition to his teaching, and comprehensive doctoring of the historical record to align it with their literary, cultural, and religious tradition, and their own personal, political, and commercial vested interests. Don't be duped by the numerous Christian salesmen marketing their brand to build their power base, sucking the vulnerable into a world of fantasy, mesmerizing them with unsubstantiated claims of miracles and promising them answers to prayer in return for church attendance and money. Religion is the biggest hoax in history. Greedy, power-seeking men making capital out of people's susceptibility to claims of magic and the supernatural. Millions are controlled by the few who claim to be able to speak for and act for an invisible, unproven God in such a way that people's lives are hijacked, their choices stolen, and their individuality destroyed. Best to bin most of the Bible and take the Gospels with a pinch of salt and meet the real human Jesus, whose spirit walks among us today, not in the hazy, compromised accounts of old, but in the countless amazing women and men who shine with light and overflow with love, and make the world a more beautiful place by all they are and do. If God exists, God clearly wants to stay well and truly out of the picture, and is waiting for us to get enough gumption to rid ourselves of religion and the religionists who tyrannize our lives, and choose the ways of love and goodness ourselves, and to have the confidence to be the amazingly different, creative, exceptional, and individual people we have been created to be, and God wants us to be, and to make our unique contribution to this glorious world.
And he also points out, in fact, that people can then, again, mold their idea of their religion to pre-existing social philosophy. They can actively doctor, edit, and bury and hide and change and misinterpret and all these other kinds of things the whole core content of the religion in order to match their social philosophy. Someone who's homophobic is going to find a way to make that Bible look homophobic. That's just the be-all, end-all of it. And as a result, I mean, he says it, he goes off, and another thing is that he has one of probably my favorite videos I've ever seen a religious authority figure post of all time.
God calls in the Satanists and Wiccans to save the church. My lives have been revealing. Never could I have imagined the level of hatred, vitriol, condemnation and prejudice that festers beneath the surface of so many sweet-faced Christians preaching about Jesus. They are so convinced they are right. They know what's right. They can tell you what's right. And they are right in God's eyes. So much so that they, without even realizing it, have become the very people Jesus told them not to be. Jesus said, "Don't judge, don't condemn, don't lay religious burdens upon people. Instead, love, accept, help, heal, forgive, care, and be kind." The comments on my live and some of the guests pour out their Christian hatred in a never-ending stream of poison. So guess what? God calls in the Satanists and the Wiccans, who have fled the ugliness of Christianity and now stand as its challengers and exposers. And they preach Jesus' message. Be kind, treat others as you would want to be treated, live at peace, allow others to be themselves, respect people and do no harm, make the world a better place, live in harmony with all good people. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, Satan was God's trusted agent to reveal hypocrisy, uncover pretense, expose humbug, reveal prevarication and target corruption. Nature and Mother Earth too, as the Wiccans believe, also have a way of making the proud humble and the arrogant still. It's time for the church and Christians to wake up and realize Jesus left them a long time ago. If they want to reconnect, they may well find him speaking to them through a Satanist, a Wiccan, a pagan, a member of another religion, or no religion at all, a rapper, a rioter, a rebel, or even the person next door. God is everywhere and in everyone, and the sooner Christians and the church realize that, the better.
And you know, I've seen this guy in the trenches of TikTok Live. I have seen this poor man just absolutely getting the most insane vitriol and harassment on TikTok Live as a result of the truth that he is saying. When he gets on live, suddenly there are people who jump on to talk and end up berating him, saying he's a heretic, he's a failure, he's a disgrace, an archbishop knows nothing about Christianity, so on and so on and so on. And yet, despite all of that, he stays true to his message. He says it like it is. He says it in a way that might piss people off if they're not ready to hear it. He hits hard. He hits fast. He says stuff that gets people going. And he does it so that that message, that truth can get out there. So that the social philosophy he carries, which in my opinion does in fact largely match the social philosophy of Jesus and of God, can be further put out into the world. But now listen, okay? This holds true, this idea of social philosophy uniting us all, for pagans and Christians, and it holds true for the occultist and left-hand path community as well. It absolutely does. I want no one to walk away from this video thinking that just because I started with this recent conundrum in the left-hand path community, that means that they are exempt from what I'm saying here. They're not exempt at all. There is no one who should be thinking that just because someone is a demonolator or an occultist, that they are inherently a bad person or with bad social philosophy. No. And in fact, I can hold up 3 wonderful people for you right now who absolutely are on the same wavelength as I am. We vibe, we get it, we understand each other quite a bit. And of course, while we don't agree on every single thing, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's what having different faith paths will do. You'll have some differences. We agree on really the same core values. And these people are Lilith's son, Aziel, and the Devil's Advocate. And so now you already saw a video from Aziel. You saw that video where she was very much expressing regret for having platformed someone that turned out to be a total piece of trash. Sorry to say. But, you know, where she regretted having given a voice to that Levi person who ended up just being so abusive and such a menace to the community. And, you know, I've been on TikTok for a good 3 years now, and I've been in contact with Aziel for like almost like that entire time, and I feel like we've seen each other experience a lot of trials and challenges and growth in our social philosophy. And we also agree that social philosophy is not something that you just decide one day and that's it. It's not something that you just set in stone and there it is and that's your beliefs forever. Developing one's social philosophy is a lifelong task. It's something that never ends because we're always experiencing new things, growing, we're getting older, we're learning, we're meeting new people, getting introduced to new points of view, exposed to new cultures and music and ideas and all these other things. And so social philosophy is not something you can ever finish building. And we agree with that completely, and as such, we also recognize the capacity for people to grow, to change, to experience the grace of being given another opportunity. But all that aside, one thing I really admire about Aziel is her commitment to justice. She wants to create safe spaces for people to explore spirituality and work through the things that plague them, work through, terrible past experiences and all these things. She wants to create a space where, people can ask questions without fear of judgment or anything else like that. Aziel's the kind of person that really reminds us that, judging people for their practice and for goofy little things like maybe using a lemon in a hex, I mean, it's fun to goof on each other and poke fun about it, but there's no reason to put people down for things that honestly aren't hurting anyone.
At this, many are influenced by others, especially when they start.
Go back and watch Spectre's full video. I am so tired of this kind of attitude from people where they're like so bought into this idea of individualism that they can't pull their head out of their ass to give a shit about anybody else. Put down Michael W. Ford, okay? Go outside. Stop it.
And as you look through her videos and see how, she handles things like the Levi situation and how she responds to knowledge that people she once thought were decent are actually not, something that she really sticks by is that she does not want to cause suffering and harm to people, whether by intention or whether accidentally because she didn't know something. That's why, that long video she made about having platformed Levi on knowing what he was going to do is so important and was so important for her to make. Aziel is super quick to admit when she's made a mistake and, apologize for it and own up for it, take accountability for it, and I really admire that. And so we connect on that social philosophy of not only, not doing harm to people and causing suffering, but also on understanding that we're all human and we're all growing all the time. Like there's no like, oh, I'm 35 and I'm done growing now. Like, no, we're all growing, we're all learning, we're all continuing to try, fall down, get up and try again. And Lilith's son, too, is one that has very much a, kind of live and let live philosophy, and especially a leave me be philosophy, very much like a, don't hurt me, don't bother me, and there will be no problems kind of person. And honestly, he's really cool. He's a sweetheart. He's someone who, I mean, as a member of the LGBTQ community in the South, he knows what it's like to be on the back end of poor social philosophy. He knows what it's like to be at the receiving end of some seriously twisted ideology. When you're growing up in a place that claims to be Christian and yet has a very certain way of treating people that don't fit in, right? Like members of the LGBTQ community, single mothers, people of different races or, you know, cultural traditions. And not to say the entire South is like that, but you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about those kind of Bible Belt evangelical type Christians that really can't seem to get out of their own way. You know. But still, as a result of that, our friend here ended up aligned with Lilith, like all the way back in 2009. And the development of that social philosophy, it was kind of a mix of things, right? Like, he didn't just decide, here's what I believe, and I'm going to choose Lilith. It was kind of like, again, developing, aging, maturing that social philosophy like a good solid cheese or something. You know?
So this is going to be kind of a loaded response to this. As I said in that last video, Lilith is a lot of different things to different people. And I don't ever want to clip her wings, so to speak, or necessarily put her in a box. To disregard those potentially violent characteristics to Lilith and that archetype would be to disrespect her. I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole baby unaliver thing because I've not had that experience. However, I am mindful of it. My experience with her is valid for me. Now, there's a whole group of other people over here that belong to the Abrahamic faith, and they truly believe that she is an evil entity and she unalives babies and targets men, etc. Their experience is valid for them. Kind of like if we went out to a restaurant and I had a quick greet with the server. The server was awesome. The food was great. Everything was on time. It was affordable. The best experience I've had at a restaurant to date. Somebody else goes the next day, has the same server, gets the same food, and has the worst experience at that restaurant. Both of our experiences are valid. But for the sake of this example, it's not necessarily going to change my opinion of the restaurant unless it was, they're homophobic or something, but disregard that. We're just using this as an example. I mean, really the same can be said for people. There's a whole group of people that love me for no other reason than me just existing. And there's a whole nother group of people that hate me for no other reason than me just existing. Both of those opinions are valid for those individuals, but neither one of those opinions alter my life. I exist regardless, and the same can be said for spirits and deities. Now let's talk about the Christian God. Scholars are kind of split down the middle of him being based from Yahweh, either a war god or a storm god. And we see some instances in the Bible of him being a storm god, like with the Great Flood. But for me, being a war god and a storm god, like there's so much overlap there. The entire Old Testament, he was invoked and called upon for war. Left and right, he was unaliving innocent people and like had his name attached to innocent people dying. Let's take a step back from that and look at current day events. The Holy Land in the Middle East has been bathed in the blood of innocent people since the dawn of time and continues to do so to this day. The Holocaust, slavery, countless wars in history, all of these events which people were literally reaching out and crying for help to the Christian God, and he did nothing. Seeing that we know the Christian God was originally a war god, why would he step in during times like that to help? He enjoys it. When we look at Christianity and the events surrounding it and their God being a war god, stuff like that clicks and it makes sense. Now let's go back to the Bible. Then they made the New Testament. You know how millennials have this running joke where we add LOL to the end of sentences because the original sentence seemed a little too harsh and aggressive? The harsh and aggressive sentence is the Old Testament. The New Testament is the LOL on the end of it. Genocide, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Hashtag John 3:16. Very conflicting accounts. You're sending me mixed signals. And to be honest with you, if most Christians were just kind of upfront and transparent about their God being a war god, I wouldn't have so much of an issue about it. It's kind of like the flipped opposite side of how Lilith is portrayed. As with any spirit, they're both capable of malevolence and benevolence.
It's through occultism and the left-hand path that he was able to find, you know, the freedom to find out what it is he believes is right, good, and also come to really stand up for himself, stand up for other people, develop that sense of sovereignty, of, you know, of respect for himself and for other people. That framework of occultism has helped to be that framework of occultism has helped him be authentically and unapologetically himself. And he uses his voice and his platform to encourage the same in other people, to speak up for where, you know, people might not be able to speak up for themselves.
Jesus had 2 fathers and he turned out just fine. Also, I need you to be a bit more specific with traditional marriages, because all of these arrangements, as you can tell, are traditional biblical marriages involving prisoners of war, concubines, several wives. 2 gay guys raising a kid is a problem? Y'all are silly.
And of course, it's also been a treat for everyone who just enjoys his content, especially as he shows us pieces of his current journeys and adventures and experiences, like, you know, living the nomadic lifestyle he has going on right now, which is a lot of fun to look at and a lot of fun to kind of come along with him for. But philosophically, it's the interpretation of Lilith as a figure seeking equality and sovereignty over her own body, choices, life, and decisions that kind of makes sense, right? That they would end up together, and he says so himself. It's that, you know, control over one's own boundaries and you know, self-worth and things like that aligns him with this concept of Lilith and helped him kind of work out more and more of his social philosophy. And like all of us, you know, the older he gets, the older I get, the older you get, the older we all get, the older we get, the more we experience, the more people we meet, the more we realize that a lot of these stereotypes of occultism and how occult people act, right, with this like cringe-ass edgelord aesthetic and this like, you know, quest for power and nothing else, the more we realize that that's not good and that's like really just useless as a fart in the wind. It's not healthy for people. It's not good. And you don't need to be of any one religion to understand that. There are plenty of occultists to understand that. And so lastly, another one of those is the Devil's Advocate. And the Devil's Advocate is honestly a really cool guy. You know, one that works in a store that sells all kinds of witchcraft materials. One who's always posting about, you know, books and resources and stuff that have to do with occultism. And while he may not be as like aggressively in-your-face political as someone like, you know, say Archbishop Blake or Pastor Paul over here, really just political, you can see in the vibe of his content what he believes, right? You can see that he walks the talk, that he's a sweetheart. He doesn't have to get up there and soapbox it every 5 minutes for people to know what he's about, which is, you know, education, safe spaces to ask questions, guiding principles of, you know, self-mastery and discipline and personal growth. These are things that are made evident on his page.
Not only is this a great question, but I'm going to answer it right now because my hair looks fantastic. It's 1 a.m. and I got a spell I got to look after. So let's get down to it. I gave some variation of an answer for this when I was on Ivy the Occultist's channel for the multi-creator collaboration thing, which a new one just dropped, by the way. So might be some good advice over there. Check it out if you got a chance. But what I tell people is, because I get this sometimes, like a decent amount, more than I'd like to admit. But I manage to keep going every day because of discipline, which does not happen overnight, and I know is not necessarily an answer within itself, because that question is then, okay, how do I gain discipline in this? And the answer I give people is to do one thing, super simple, every day. That could be something simple like light a candle. You don't even got to put intention into it, just light a candle.
And he's kind, and he's creative, and he's also willing to help other people view magic the way he does, which is as a modes of expression and as a tool and avenue for that personal growth, that self-discovery, and, you know, that development of one's personal ideas, that ability to chafe and rebel against systems that hurt people. magic for him is very personal, very mental, and therefore very philosophical. And he knows that there is something up with the social philosophy of a lot of people who come to the left-hand path community, especially people who come with a lot of preconceived notions of what it means to be a demonologer and what one has to think to be a part of that scene. In fact, he experienced it firsthand when he joined, some LHP communities. He experienced just mentally abusive and toxic behaviors from people, scary situations, and very scary mindsets that, like, were not good for him mentally or emotionally. Cult-like tactics and just a lot of bad acting and a lot of focus on aesthetics over actual development of one's craft and practice and beliefs. And that's what inspired him to be making content in the first place, so that he could create that space for folks who don't want to get lost in the sauce and instead just want to find good information and learn how to master themselves, learn how to come to terms with the world, as well as speak out against things that they see as not right. And while he sees the potential in, the left-hand path community, occultism community, and things like that, and, he finds the concept of the adversary to be really helpful for people to gain the confidence to speak out and stand against, terrible institutions, even if they are the majority, he also hates to see how these communities eat themselves up from the inside out, like with this Levi and Corvus situation. In his own words, being a villain is not being an adversary. Those two things are not synonymous. The title of the adversary does not mean you are the adversary of humanity. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're doing crime and like genuine crimes like Corvus and Levi. It doesn't mean that you are being abusive or, taking advantage of people or doing these terrible things. It doesn't mean you're being this self-serving asshole. And he doesn't think there should be a space for that in that community either. So his philosophy, his social philosophy, is very much geared around treat others the way you want to be treated, but also don't let people get away with treating you badly either. Moreover, when we think back to Corvus and their whole shtick about, do you want power to dominate? Do you want power, power, power? When we think of Corvus's idea of power, and we contrast it with the Devil's Advocate's idea of power, we can see that there's a very different vibe here. Okay, there's a big difference between saying, do you want to dominate everyone? And, hey, remember that you are strong and you are capable and you have power to make change. And that's social philosophy I can get behind with the Devil's Advocate, right? That social philosophy of using magic as a means of self-expression, of, working with these energies in the world that contribute to something just so unique and beautiful out there, of learning these things for the sake of grounding oneself and for developing that self-sovereignty, that self-mastery, learning how to govern oneself and do so with respect to other people. That'll naturally translate not only into your magic and the results you get from that, but in how you deal with and approach other people. When your magical philosophy is built around, inner peace, self-mastery, and, good, honest community building, it's going to translate outside of magic too. And there are so many other people that I have not mentioned. Like, these are not by any means the only people that are worth looking at. Here are the names of a bunch of other people that I either have personally spoken to and really enjoy, or who I just simply admire from afar for their incredible, advocacy work, socio-political work, their craft and their religious tradition and their practice, and just their overall personality, vibe, and again, social philosophy of how to treat one another. They're great people. Check them out. And so that whole thing was a big section, but I really especially wanted to go into a lot of detail in the end here with my occult friends, because again, I really want to drive it home that the left-hand path and occultism is just as full of beautiful, wonderful people with beautiful, wonderful ways of treating and engaging with other people. Just because they have a spooky aesthetic or work with spirits that society stereotypes as evil and bad does not mean, first of all, that the spirits are evil and bad, and second of all, that they themselves are bad people. They're not bad people, and they're not working with bad entities. They are people who are choosing to express their social philosophy in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that resonates with them. Their frameworks for how they conduct themselves are born of personal experience and oftentimes a deeply rooted sense of justice. And the stereotypes that mainstream society has against the occult community are not at all an accurate representation of these people in this community, especially not the ones that I know. Of course, there are bad actors like frickin' Levi and Corvus over here, but that's not a requirement to be of the left-hand path. It's not a requirement to be in occultism is to act like that. And so as you can see, regardless of what faith tradition you follow, so many people can come together under a shared umbrella of social philosophy, of core values, right? Doesn't matter what God you follow, doesn't matter what denomination of Christianity you are. Can you agree on these things, these certain core values of, treating people nicely and building community and opening space at the table for everyone to come sit? If so, we'll get along great no matter what religion you are, right? Like, yeah, hell yeah. But, okay, now, all that aside, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Sarah, hold on. You're saying that we need to at least sort of develop this before we jump into, structures that give us power, like religion. How do we do that? How do we even start developing social philosophy separate of religion? For many people, they can't even conceive of that, right? For many people, you'll get those folks who ask atheists, well, what stops you from murdering and stealing and all these other things, right? Because they haven't yet learned that social philosophy and moral frameworks, they're separate from religion. So, okay, if you're not being told what to believe by religion, how do you find out what to believe? Well, step one, the first thing I really say is analyze your relationship with your fellow human. Analyze your capacity for empathy. Empathy is really where it starts. How good are you at putting yourself in the shoes of someone else? How good are you in imagining what someone else is going through and really trying to connect emotionally and relate to those people? How good are you at seeing yourself in other people, even ones that don't look like you, even ones that don't talk like you, even ones that don't believe like you? You absolutely can and should be trying to see yourself in all people. And you should absolutely be trying to relate to all people. If you can understand that you wouldn't want something bad to happen to you, why would you want to do it to someone else? And at the end of the day, no matter what someone believes, no matter what they think, no matter how messy or not they are, all human beings, and hell, I would say all frickin' creatures entirely, all birds, all trees, all frickin' any living creature wants, at the end of the day, the same thing, and that is stability, security, comfort, good treatment, right? They want food, they want safety, they want rest, they want all of that kind of stuff. Even the worst of us, even the best of us. We want a place to call home. We want people that we love and that love us. We want to feel like things are going to be okay. Again, people can be insanely different in what okay means and what their idea of security and comfort looks like, but at the end of the day, that's where a lot of these things are coming from. And it's easy to demonize people for being terrible. It's way harder to learn how to try and track back the stuff they're saying down to the roots of what they're feeling. It's a lot harder to be able to see the root of a person and see what's going on in there that's wounding the root, that's scarring the root, that's causing the leaves and the stem to come up all crinkled and bungled and fucked up. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, good social philosophy starts with being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel the things that they may be feeling, to relate to them, to understand that they are human just as you are, and to be able to see yourself in them. But the second thing to do, of course, is to research philosophy. There are many, many, many different social philosophers and just philosophers in general across all time periods and cultures that have some really interesting things to say. And so you might look into them and, read about their logic and their values and see if you resonate with them or not. For instance, Confucius, a lot of the stuff he is talking about focuses on Ren, which is that what we would now call that golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Love one another. On the other hand, Voltaire, the French philosophist, is very much someone who highly valued free speech, free belief, free religion, free press, and also having justice, fair trials. And so his social philosophy pushed him to be heavily critical of both crown and church in a time where people just did not do that. And the last thing to really develop that social philosophy is figure out how you're going to apply it. How are you going to portray what you are talking about? You can talk the talk all day long, but how are you going to walk the walk, right? Because I feel like this is also where a lot of people fall short. A lot of people, you know, like, say again, for instance, Christians, always out there saying they got to spread the gospel, spread the gospel, spread the gospel. But as they're out here with a lot of lip service about Jesus, they're then walking by the homeless person on the corner asking for money to get something to eat. They're sneering at them and acting like, right? Like, acting like they are less than human. Don't be a hypocrite. You know, if you want to develop good social philosophy, hypocrisy cannot be a part of that. As the old saying goes, right? Preach the gospel, use words as little as possible. Likewise, preach your social philosophy, use words as little as possible. Really live it. Walk it. Exemplify it. In short, know thyself, and then govern thyself. And while I will never tell anyone directly what to believe, what to think, I mean, like, at the end of the day, maybe I said a bunch of stuff in here that you don't agree with, but I will say this. If you somehow find yourself developing a social philosophy that is okay with abusing people and taking advantage of people and hurting people, you cannot be shocked when the consequences come to get you. Because at the end of the day, you live within a society that all people need to compromise on in some way. That all people need to come together and agree in some fashion what is right and what is wrong. If you develop a social philosophy that's somehow okay with just wholesale murder, don't be surprised when you get thrown in jail. But hopefully, obviously, you'd want to develop a social philosophy that's, you know, not okay with human rights abuses. Nonetheless, that's really all I gotta say about that. So be safe, be well, and next time we will come together to talk about a different video that I've been wanting to make for a long time. So with all that said, I will see you guys next time, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. See ya!